Ah,
Nice.
nice. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is part of our weekly series that we created in order to try to educate folks on a lot of different topics that we think, people might have some interest in. And then also just to let people know that I'm running for office. I've been the sustainability director at Bemidji State University for 15 years. And I am excited to, be encouraged by my community to consider putting my hat in the ring. So I've been busy meeting lots of folks and thinking about ways to reach my very rural district. And this is one of the ways that our team came up with to, to get the word out about different topics and to introduce kind of the things I'm really passionate about. Yesterday, we talked about electric vehicles. And then today we'll talk about solar energy. And we have a few more sessions coming up this week that I'll share at the end. But again, I'm just gonna share, like, the main goal is to share with you my experience, and also just to be really clear that I am not an expert. I don't know all the answers, but I will share with you what I do know. I have been an educator for a long time, so this is something that I'm really passionate about. I just got endorsed by Education Minnesota, so yay. But also it's called Erica Bailey Johnson and Special Guests, or friends, as I like to say, because I have people here that are more experts. And I've got John joining us today from Real Solar. And it'll basically, how today will work is we will share information with you for the first little bit. And then I encourage you at that time, as we're sharing the information, if questions come up, or you think of something that you want to ask, like, to jot them down. So to have a, pen and paper handy. And then most of the rest of the time today will be spent answering those questions. And if we don't have any set time, so there's nothing that says that this has to be 1 hour long. So if we, end in half an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it might be, like, that will be the way that it was meant to be. So we'll move forward and talk a little bit about solar energy today. So again, appreciate you all being here. And our big question for today is, does it work in northern Minnesota? So that's kind of the question we're trying to answer. So I just thought I'd start with some kind of cool sun information, because I forget this, like, the sun's energy is coming in when it's coming in. I mean, it's cloudy here today, but the sun is still out there, bringing energy in to lots of places on the earth. And it's like kind of inspiring to think of how big it is. Like, the sun is giant, so it's a huge bundle of energy that's coming our way. And then this one on the right says, in about 14.5 seconds, the sun provides as much energy as Earth, the people on the Earth use in a day. So that's a lot. So 14 seconds. Don't ask me how they calculated that, but that's pretty cool. So lots of free energy coming in all the time. I think that's one thing I just want to, have us keep in mind. I also just wanted to start with this graph. It's one of my favorite ones to share. And it just sort of, the main goal being that understanding that Germany is one of the leading solar energy installers. Like, they have a lot of capacity for solar. They've really focused on it. The little tiny graph at the top that you can't see very well is the US, Spain, and Germany, and our installed capacity. So you can see Germany has a lot more than we do, and they're much, much smaller, right? So in the US, what this graph basically kind of demonstrates is the resource. So how good is it, right? Like, we all know that some places get a lot more sun than others, and more intense sun, right? Solar energy. I know that in like 2001 to 2004, I taught in Kuwait in the Middle East, and they're a really rich oil producing country. But I always tell my students, like, that oil is going to run out someday. Start a solar panel company because the sun was shining like 99%. It was so odd to everybody panicked when it rained, like they couldn't drive and it was wild. They almost canceled school, you know, when it rained, but it was such a rare thing that it was a little scary for them, you know, there. So yeah, just trying to say again, like there's different amounts of solar capacity in these different places. And you can see the US in general is more on the right side of this chart, which means it's good. You know, it's better the more we get off to the right to those red, orange, yellowy colors. And then I just want you to focus on Germany. So Germany, the one that I said was kind of leading globally with solar, is actually more on the left side. So they actually don't have as good of a solar resource as we do in a good chunk of the United States, especially the continental United States. So I just wanted to share that first. And then I want to be clear about the type of solar we're talking about. So there's lots of different types of solar energy, and I'm mostly going to be focused on active solar, and then particularly solar photovoltaic. But just a real quick like 101 on the different types of solar energy that humans particularly use. And we can kind of divide them up into two categories. So one is passive solar. And I do really want to spend a little time on this because it's really important for us to think about in the northern climates, because it's a really easy way to gain solar energy into our homes if we think about it a little bit. And then active solar is the other category. And that's the one we actually use like devices to collect it, store it, and convert it. But passive solar, that's just where we don't depend upon any other devices. We just warm up. Like you'll be familiar with that by your car getting hot on a sunny day, by greenhouses work that way. And one of the things that I want to emphasize with passive solar is that a lot of our ways that we construct homes have not really considered this really free energy that we can obtain if we just think about the directions that our windows are facing. Like in our region, they should mostly be on the south side of the house. And then we should also have an eave hanging over so it blocks the summer sun. So you can see in this image, this is exactly what we should be doing when we construct our homes. We have an eave that hangs over, that blocks that higher summer sun. And then we have the winter sun that's lower in the sky, right, in our region, and that lets that sun come in. So this would be a really good example of honestly not spending any money, just thinking about where our windows are when we build our homes. And so active solar has a few different types too. You may be familiar with using the sun to heat up water. And there's lots of ways that can be used. They can be used for like in-floor heating. That can be used for our hot water use. And then there's also air heat. So we can also heat up air and then blow that into a structure. And then the last one is that one is a little more complicated, but what a lot of people are familiar with, because it's very versatile, is actually using sun and using a inverter to convert that electricity into something we can use in our homes. So that's solar photovoltaic, or a lot of times people will call this PV, so solar PV. So some of those options to purchase solar energy are to install it, you know, as an individual homeowner. Like you can install it on your own property, or you can actually buy into something that's installed somewhere else, like a community or a solar garden. And our family actually does both. So we have it installed on our house, on our garage actually, and then we also buy into a solar garden. So when you install on your own property, there are options with that as well, quite a few different options. You can install it on a roof, like we did. We installed it on our garage. You can install it on the ground, and that can be either fixed where it doesn't move, or it can move, and that's called a tracking system. And then it can either be tied to the electric grid or not. So I know people all over in our region that have all these different options. So all of them are things you need to think about based upon your location, your goals. I think with your system would be a good way to put that. And then ultimately like your ability, like to, like you have a roof that is newer and will be able to take the weight of solar panels. Like that is something that we had to do right away, was actually our roof was old and we needed to get new roofing on there before we installed solar panels. So all these different things that you need to think about. And then if you want to buy into a solar garden, like something offsite, if you don't have good solar capacity where you are, you have a lot of big trees, or the direction of your roof isn't ideal, there's other options to purchase into solar gardens. And I would encourage you to check out Solar United Neighbors. That's a really great resource. I know they've done a lot of work across Minnesota to connect different neighbors to make solar more affordable for communities. So I encourage you to look into that. And then that last little piece that I have on here is Minnesota has a net metering rule. So if you do tie into the grid, for all systems that are 40 kilowatt in capacity or below, the compensation is at the average annual retail electricity rate. So in other words, what that means is that when we are grid tied, so our system is tied into our electric grid, we're not off the grid. So when it's tied into the grid, as long as that system is less than 40 kilowatts, that you get the same rate that you're paying for your electricity. So if you're paying 10 cents for your electricity, the utility company will actually honor that solar energy that you're creating with 10 cents too. So it's like an even equal thing, as long as it's a system that is less than that. So a net metering rule. I did want to show this graph too, and just say that the cost of electricity, you'll actually see it in our example, in our own personal example in a little bit, but the cost has been declining significantly. And so I just wanted to share this graph with you, like all the different components, and these colors just represent like the different things you think about, like the hardware that you need to install, the inverter, the solar modules are the gray. You can see how much over time. This one just goes to 2018, but maybe John, when you talk, you can kind of share your experience about, you know, what's happening now in 2022. And but all the different pieces have really reduced in cost, especially those modules. So our experience, this is what our system looks like right now. So our solar system, we have a 6.6 kW roof mount. That's the photo in the background. And we actually, this is our second system that we've installed on a house. So we moved to Bemidji in 2004. We started looking at solar shortly after that and looking at options. And one of the main reasons we really wanted to look at solar energy was just to try to be better stewards of our resources. We believe that solar is coming in for free and it's pollution free. We'll talk about that in a little bit too, but there's lots of benefits associated with solar. Sometimes people ask about, you know, it's a lot to think about the costs and all those sorts of things, but I always say, like, you know, we could have purchased a boat, right? Or we could have bought like an ice castle fish house, or we could have done other things, but we felt like this was a good use of our resources for the long term, not only for us, but also for our community and the earth. So that was a big decision, and it's really important to us to consider those types of things in our decision-making process. So in 2008, we installed a 2.1 kilowatt roof mount system tied to the grid. It was again on our garage. And the cost of that at the time, this is the part that I think is just really interesting. So the cost of that at the time, a 2.1 system, was about $24,000. There was a state rebate available at the time. That is something also that's kind of hard to keep track of, like rebates and incentives kind of, they fluctuate. So you have to look into what the state and the federal and sometimes utility companies are offering. At that time, there was a state rebate of about $5,000 and a federal tax credit of about $3,000. So the ultimate total cost of the system after the rebate was about $17,000. So remember, that was 2.1 system for $17,000. We moved in 2011. So we moved from that house in 2011 and we looked at another system with our current house. And this is the one that you see in the picture. And we had a proposal. It was a 2.88 roof mount system. It was a little bit bigger and it was about 19,000 was the cost. There was, at that time, there's a 30% federal renewable energy tax credit. That was around 6,000. So the total cost of the system would have been around 13,000. So you can already see at that time, 2012, that was 4 years later, it was a bigger system and it cost quite a bit less. But we decided at that time, like I said, we needed a new roof first. We had an older, like the shingles were old, and so we needed to get that fixed first. And then we also made a decision to remove some trees. That's a hard one for a lot of people, and it was hard for us. But we did decide, I mean, we have a lot of trees around in our yard, and we did decide to move a few to make the solar accessibility better. And then so after we got all that done, we came back and we installed this solar in 2016. And at that time, we were able to, as you can see, afford a much bigger system. So it was a 6.6 system. So it's almost 3 times, a little over 3 times bigger than our one installed in 2008. The cost was about like a little bit more, not much, about 27,000. And then there was still that 30% federal renewable energy tax credit. And with that, we got about $8,000 taken off. So the total cost of this system, and again, keep in mind, it's over 3 times bigger than the installation in 2008. And this wasn't even 10 years later. And the cost was around the same. It was a little, over 18,700 for the total cost. So that's pretty significant to share with, I think with the changes that we're seeing in solar energy accessibility and costs. I really wanted to try to get this graph updated, but I didn't quite have the time to get the numbers in there, but I have been keeping an Excel spreadsheet of all of our numbers over the past, since we installed the solar. And I think this graph is really, really interesting. So the orange line is our use, like energy use. So you can see so you can see in the summer, we're down a little bit. And in the winter, we're up a little bit. Summer's down, winter's up, summer's down. So that's kind of our usage pattern for our just like how many kilowatt hours of electricity that we use. And that's probably just, it's more dark in the winter. So we're using more lights and that kind of thing. And then we have an electric car. So it needs a little more energy in the winter. Whoops, sorry. It needs a little more energy in the winter. So with that battery, so it takes a little bit more too. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we think creates that cycle. And then the yellow line is how much the solar generated. Now this is super interesting because you'll see it's kind of like inverted. So you can see that it produces a lot in the summer and not a lot in the winter. It produces a lot in the summer, not a lot in the winter. And so what I would like to point out to you is there are moments where we're actually producing more electricity than we're consuming. And that is in the summers. Anytime this yellow line is over the orange line, that is when we are a net zero, energy home as far as electricity. So that happens in the summer. In the winter for us, what's tricky is that our panels, not only is the sun lower on the horizon, and the other thing would be it's covered a lot of times with snow. And so my husband will go up there and he will scrape off the panels, or we have that like kind of roof rake thing that he'll use, but it is hard to do when we get a lot of snow in the winter. So I'd say that is probably the main reason why it's lower in that, in those winter months. And then the last line is the amount of like our bill. So this green line is money, like how much our bill was. And you can see that like we didn't, like when that yellow line is over the orange line, we didn't owe anything in electricity, and they usually pass that forward onto the next bill is how our utility handles that. So you can see our bill is sort of higher in the winter, and then our bill is lower in the summer. Okay. And then I just want to make one quick point with like a lot of folks, when they start to look into solar energy, they will try to really calculate an ROI is a typical way that we have created that narrative around, do I want to do this? And I really have thought about this for a long time, like over a decade. And I don't feel like doing an ROI when you're an individual consumer and you want to look at installing solar energy on your house is a really good way to do the math. So this is not current. This is the graph that you saw. This is the math for, you know, how much and solar energy in dollars has been produced so far. And why I struggle with ROI is when we do an ROI, we are trying to get that investment down to zero. And not only are we trying to get it down to zero, but we're trying to say that solar energy should make me money. And we do not say the same thing about fossil fuels. We don't say, hey, coal, I want you to make me money, or any other type, like fuel oil, no other type of energy do we ask that. We only ask it of renewable energies, like wind turbines, we want to know the ROI, like solar energy, we want to know the ROI. So for me, I just really want you to think about like, what is fair? What is a fair way? And I haven't honestly seen anything yet. I haven't seen anybody be able to come up with something that really accounts for the fact that we would be paying for electricity anyway. Like if I did not have the solar energy on my roof, I would still be paying for that electricity somehow, right? So it's not really fair to say I want the solar energy to be zero cost and actually make me money. Like we don't ask that of other energy sources. So it's something that I caution everybody about when you start to look into the return on investment. And sometimes doing return on investment makes sense, but for a lot of times for individual homeowners, it is not a good way to do the math. So last slide, I just wanted to kind of lay out some of the things that are really nice for us, and then what are some of the challenges. I think you've heard some of them already that I've referred to. But what's really nice about the solar energy is that it's renewable, right? Like the sun is going to be there for like a long time. So it's something that's always coming, and it's free. Like it just comes in. Like we don't have to go dig it up. We don't need to suck it out of the ground. We don't need to do, you know, any kind of like chemical formula. It's just there and it's coming in for free. And then once you manufacture the panels, that energy is pollution free. So it's a really, you know, pollution free way to create electricity once you have them up on your building or on the ground. And then ultimately low to no maintenance. There is a little bit of maintenance with especially living in our climate with getting the snow off if you wanted to do that. A lot of times you can angle those panels so that it'll more or less automatically come off. But I know with our roof, it's not quite the ideal angle, so it doesn't flow off as easy, but lots of times you can figure that out. The other benefit is that it's really versatile. So like I said, we have an electric car so that the solar can help charge the car. You can use that electricity for heating. You can use it for all kinds of different things. So it's really a versatile energy source. Another kind of benefit is that you can actually site the solar panels where the electricity is used. So I say that because you lose some energy in distribution lines. So really long distribution lines of electricity that we're used to seeing, those big power lines, you know, going down, there's some loss associated with that. And if you can site the solar right where close to where you are, you reduce that loss. And then energy can be stored. So we all know that the sun, like today in Bemidji, it's really cloudy, it's not out, and we know at night it's not available. You can store that they are constantly working on that technology, and there's a lot of really cool things happening right now in the battery storage world. So I only think we'll continue to see that improve. And then ultimately, the other thing I really like about solar energy, it's a stable long-term expense. So the upfront cost is large. You can see that that's a large upfront cost, but I know what that energy is going to cost me for the life of the panels. And we can see that a lot of other types like propane, gas prices, like they fluctuate a lot and they can increase a lot. So I have this stable thing that I've paid for that I know is, I know the value of for a long time. Some of the challenges are, as we all know, like the sun is not always available. And then that we have that higher upfront cost. And that another piece, as we had to decide to cut down some trees, not everybody has the right place, like in space. So your roof line might not be the right direction. You might not have enough space on the ground that doesn't have, trees blocking it, or another like neighbor's house or something blocking it. So you need to have the right space if you want to have something on your property, and that can be a challenge. And like I said, though, then it's a good idea to look into community gardens or solar gardens that are built somewhere else that does have good accessibility. The other challenge is that it requires engineering expertise. So you do need to have somebody come in. It's not easy to do it yourself. So you would need to find an expert. And that's why we have John here today joining us. So you can talk a little bit about that. And then the other difficulty that I've explained for us in this climate is keeping the panels snow free in the winter. So that is something that has been a little bit of a challenge. So those are like the pieces of solar energy that we've really, that we've had on our property for over 10 years and wanted to share with you today. And now I want to really give John some time if he would like to add some pieces, and then open it up for questions from the audience. So this slide is just my last slide. I just want to encourage you to also consider coming to our other Zoom at Noon events this week. We have one tomorrow about communication. And then Thursday, we're going to talk about ranked choice voting. And then on Friday, we have Jim joining us to talk about farming and how our conservation programs have failed us. So, and then finally, if anybody's in the area on Friday, we have a big fundraiser with Corey Medina and Brothers. So really excited about that. That will be at Lake Bemidji State Park. And then there's lots of other ways to stay engaged and help out our work for this campaign. So there's, our Facebook page and our website are good places to start. So with that, John, are you ready do you want to share some pieces of your wisdom too? So John worked at Real
Sure.
Solar. Yeah, if you want to take some time to introduce yourself, and then also share some pieces of maybe like what you see is currently happening, and then maybe some other main pieces that I might have missed. That'd be great.
Right on. Yeah, man, and I'm impressed with all of your efforts, Erica. If everybody was half as thoughtful as you, we'd be much farther down the road towards a safer future. So
appreciate that.
Yeah, I am John Ruvelson, and I'm mostly actually a sales person at Real Solar, which is from Real Energy nonprofit that started about 20 years ago. And I'm just I do sales, but I'm really just kind of a solar obsessed geek, I guess. So, and I just love, I think solar is a good stepping stone for the bigger energy picture that we're all looking at, and environmental picture too. So yeah, what can I add? Your PowerPoint when it even has some of the same slides as the PowerPoint that I use for these things. So you're right on topic, and even better than mine on many things. I loved it. What can I add? we, yeah, I'm not sure where to subject. So on the nose there. Um, but maybe is solar what the I think that the subject of this is solar viable in Minnesota? And yes, it is. And it's like we have a better, higher sun hours than Germany. And there are a number of modes and efforts to try to get us all to use solar. And there's tons and tons of research around us that is getting us towards a solar future in the Midwest and in Minnesota. So yeah,
Hey,
we
John,
have, go ahead.
what is like so you saw pretty much all my data only went to like 2018. What has
Yeah.
been the trend the last like 4 years in solar? I'm super curious I mean, with COVID, I'm sure there's been some supply chain issues and that type of thing, but what has been what have the last 4 years been like?
Yeah, I saw that as like my the big point I could almost one of my only things I could top or add to on your excellent presentation. But yeah, prices are still coming down a lot in the very immediate past of COVID and some political supply chain political issues. The prices have bumped up slightly now, but it kind of, and that's just on a few items of solar, mostly the solar panels, which is obviously the biggest part of what makes solar PV, photovoltaics, electric solar. But yeah, it should not be a reason to, it should not be a deterrent at all. And yeah, I think we are averaging about $3 per watt for solar, which is about where your last install landed. So, and there's many factors that go into that. So a 40 kilowatt array, it's going to be closer to $2 per watt. But if you install a 2 kilowatt array, it's still kind of takes the same number of electricians and trucks driving out. So you're going to be above the $3 mark on that. And
John, what are
distance to
the
install, etc.
finish
Go
up,
ahead.
sorry.
Yeah, no,
Finish
no,
what you're saying.
go. Yeah.
I was gonna just ask about incentives too. Like, I know that those have changed quite a bit. I was curious if there are, I know that we're working on the Solar for Schools project. So there's a big incentive right now for K-12 and higher education schools to get solar installed. But what does it look like
Yeah.
for residential customers now, right now?
Yep. So yeah, there's a few incentives. First, there's a federal incentive of about a quarter of the cost of the install that you get back, as you do have to owe taxes to get this to not, hopefully will get turned into a rebate. So the IRS would actually pay you in the future in case you are somebody who doesn't make a lot of money per year and doesn't owe a lot of taxes. But yeah, so there's a few sort of like mandates in Minnesota. There's the 1.5 legislative mandate for solar specifically of for us to hit a 25% across Minnesota, just general renewable mandate by 2025. So all the utilities kind of have this fire lit under them to help pass on some of the savings to us. And then so after the federal ITC, usually the way that you get your different solar rebates is through your utility companies, which kind of makes sense. But Some of them almost completely ignore it, and then, but it's probably the large 4 big utilities in Minnesota that are really carrying them out because they have the most pressure under them to kind of hit these percentage marks of renewable energy. So, yeah, you have the Otter Tail Power POP rebate there, which I think you might be skipping, but they felt bad that if you don't pay taxes, they're going to help nonprofits that don't pay taxes take advantage of this same money, and it's really the hugest rebate I've ever seen. So that you guys are fortunate up there. It's too bad you don't have that utility for your house, but it is a very cool one. And the utilities, also their staff are really starting to come around to solar, which is really cool. And many of them even have a staff devoted to specifically to solar now. If you pay taxes, another huge method of saving money on this is through depreciation or kind of tax write-offs. So solar really is bent towards, right now, the financial incentives are really bent towards, other than the Otter Tail rebate, they're bent towards tax for-profit organizations or businesses. So if you're a Target store, it's much more cost effective for you to get it than if you're a church that doesn't pay taxes. But then there's organizations that are made to completely take advantage of that, and oftentimes what they sort of do is split that difference with you, but they'll take half of that federal credit. They're still great organizations, and it seems to be a fairly pro-solar kind of environment, but they're in the business of making money. So it becomes easier for just homeowners, residential homeowners like you and me, to get it. But as you said, the ROI is really a kind of a unfortunate window to look at, to frame what solar is worth to you. So, and really that's what it comes down to, is what are you getting out of it, and what's your goals with solar? Some people are coming into it only, they're just investors, and they ask us to build them large solar arrays just as a business. But for you and I, it's more of a personal choice.
Yeah, thanks, John. That's some good information. It's interesting to see what's going on now. So we have some time. I think Corey, you shared in the chat I saw you shared in the chat the website for that Solar United Neighbor website. So thanks for doing that. And then if anybody has a question, you can unmute yourself. That'll work today. You can also put a question in the chat too, if you want to do that. But does anyone in our audience have questions about solar energy? Like, I would say one other piece that I'll share is for both of our solar projects that we've done, the best step to do is to do a site assessment. So basically you find somebody that can do a site assessment, that's a solar expert. They come out to sometimes they'll do it for free. Sometimes it's maybe like a couple $100 or something, but they'll come out to your house and they will bring what's called a solar tracker, and they will look at your place. They'll look at your utility use, they'll look at your house, they'll look at your land, the trees around, they'll see how much shade different areas have, and they'll be able to come up with a proposal of, how your site specifically would be for solar energy. And I would say that's the first best step. And then at that same time, I know with both of our solar site assessments, we were able to see what are the incentives that are available. So they also said, here's a federal tax thing you could get. Here is a state incentive. Here's what your utility offers. And so all of that kind of comes to you, and then you have all the information you would need to make a better decision, a better informed decision. So
Mhm.
I would say that would be the first best step to do if you're thinking about solar energy on your property.
And we'll even since we're some of our sites to visit are so far apart in Minnesota, we usually will do kind of we'll have an interview you and your property and then do it via satellite, and we get we can make up a really, really accurate report
Mm.
just to kind of give you a feel of it, and we'll boil all of the different incentives that we know of
Mm.
for you
know-
and cost of energy, et cetera, into that report.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool work that's going on out there about like, can't remember what that one is called, but it's about the solar energy, and you can like type in your address and it'll just show like the sun, how the sun falls in
solar-
space. Yeah. That is it LiDAR data or something like that? But
Solar website. There's a couple of them. They
Yeah.
use LiDAR and can give you they are not good at like measuring fire code setbacks on your roof or seeing what's an overhang on your roof,
Mm.
et cetera. But it's still a really good I mean a very good you can see immediately what you're looking at.
Mhm. And John, I do see Kathy asked, how big of hail can the panels take? I know that's a good one. Like what kind of, yeah. So I don't know. Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, that's funny, that question. That's a very relevant question, and it's sort of outside of the normal science questions, but it comes up all the time. And a lot of the modules will even have a hail rating on their data sheet, but it's there is no absolute guarantee that a hailstone the size of a car is not going to break a solar module, but they're incredibly strong, and they're at least as strong as the skylights on my house that are still there after 30 years of numerous hailstorms, at least, or a few years. So I think if it were at just the right angle, kind of the act of God hailstorm could cause damage, but for the most part, we expect them to be there for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, I know when I have asked that same question, the answer I typically got was like your marble size, ping pong ball size, golf ball size, that won't do anything. It shouldn't anyway. And then if you do get up to the like softball size hail, which I've never seen, in my life, but that might be able to do some damage.
Yeah.
So just like we did, you get the panels on your insurance and they're covered as part of your home. So
they are, the only answer is they are incredibly sturdy glass. Yeah.
Yeah, good question.
Do
we have any other questions out there you guys are wondering? And again, you just have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, everybody could probably safely unmute and not overload the website since there's only 6 of us.
Thank you. You gotta thank you. That's good.
I'm trying to think of fun highlights to hit, but you did well.
All right. Well, I think we got a really good overview of solar energy. So again, I just want to thank those of you that were here. We have recorded this session. And I want to thank John for participating. Again, he is in Pine River, or Bacchus, actually. Is that where your building is at now? And
right in between.
Yeah, one of these fine companies in northern Minnesota that does really good work and can help you figure out if that's a good decision. So thanks again. I'm gonna stop the recording now.